In the 3 years before Jason Kidd joined the New Jersey Nets, the team was struggling. Led by all-star Stephon Marbury, the team did not even make the playoffs in the 3 seasons he was there. But then, in the 2001 offseason, the Nets made a blockbuster trade, sending Marbury to the Phoenix Suns for Jason Kidd. At the time, nobody was sure who got the better end of the deal. Kidd was the better all-around player, but he wasn't leading the Suns anywhere either, besides a bunch of early playoff exits. The Nets were also rebuilding at the time, so trading away a 24-year-old all-star point guard in Marbury for an older, 28-year-old Jason Kidd was seen as a win-now move, and a bit questionable. I mean, nobody thought the rest of the Nets roster was even capable of making the playoffs, let alone contend for a championship. But with Kidd leading the team, they were able to do exactly that. How's it going, ladies and gents? My name's Andy, and today we're going to take a look at Jason Kidd's NBA career, his time as a coach, and some strange stories about him that don't even seem true, yet they are. But before we start, I'd like to give a shout out to my sponsor, Hardwood Amino. The Hardwood Amino app is an amazing app for basketball fans. There are polls, quizzes, trivia, a ton of fan-made NBA content, and pretty much everything about basketball. There's also a cool wiki section with details about your favorite player or team. For example, here's a page about Zach LaVine. To get the app, just go on your iOS or Android device and search the App Store for Hardwood Amino. I usually check out the quizzes and polls, those are my favorite features. The community is awesome. I've been on there for about a year now, and it's continuing to grow at a rapid pace with over 80,000 members. I've also partnered with them a couple of times in the past to do some Q&As as well, and it was a fun time. Hope you guys check it out. Alright, let's get started. Anyway, let's rewind a bit and take a look at when Kidd first got drafted. He was the number 2 overall pick in the 1994 NBA draft, joining a really bad Dallas Mavericks team that won just 13 games in the previous season. When he got drafted, scouts felt like his court vision and high basketball IQ would translate to the NBA very well, and for the most part, they'd be correct. Sorta. Apparently, right when Kidd got drafted, he said that he was going to turn this team around 360 degrees. Which doesn't even make sense, because if you turn anything around 360 degrees, it'll be back to where it started. Alright, moving on. So with the addition of Kidd and the improved play of their other young players like Jim Jackson and Jamal Mashburn, the three of them turned the team around, winning 36 games in Kidd's rookie season. Unfortunately, there were a couple of things going on off the court with this team, mainly some drama over a woman named Toni Braxton. Although recent reports suggest that the story of them fighting over Braxton has been disputed and mostly false. Either way, the three of them did not get along off the court, and by the middle of the 1996-97 season, Dallas traded Kidd to the Phoenix Suns for Michael Finley and some other throw-ins. With the Phoenix Suns, Kidd developed into a perennial all-star. He led the league in assists for 3 years, and later on, he paired up with Penny Hardaway to form the Backcourt 2000. In his 4.5 seasons in Phoenix, Kidd had some of his best individual seasons, averaging 14 points, 6 rebounds, and nearly 10 assists per game. And he made drastic improvements in his shooting, although it was still not great. Additionally, Kidd led the Suns to the playoffs for 5 straight years, with multiple seasons of winning 50-plus games. Unfortunately, they only managed to get out of the first round once, because the Western Conference was just ridiculous. Him and his wife Joanna always seem to have a great relationship. Kidd has said before that his relationship with her means a lot to him, and she motivated him to become the player he dreamed to become. But in 2001, Kidd got charged for domestic abuse. Joanna accused him of striking her in the mouth. And it turned out to be true. The police discovered that her lip was swollen and there was bleeding inside her mouth. Yikes. At the time, it was really shocking because, quote, the pair has been held up as the model pro sports couple. They even hosted a local telecast together and made appearances on TV. Also, according to the police reports, Kidd apparently took a French fry from his 2-year-old son's plates and then spit the French fry at his wife's face. And then, as his wife turned away from Jason then striked her in the face while holding a container of yogurt in his hand. Yeah, this sounds bad, and when the police asked Kidd whether or not these things have happened before, he replied with, "I have issues that I have to work on." Anyway, by the end of the 2001 season, Kidd got traded to the Nets, and this is where he had his best seasons in terms of playoff success. In his first season in New Jersey, he helped the team win 26 more games than before, finishing with a 52-30 record, along with the best defense in the entire league. They managed to reach the finals where they would get utterly demolished by the Lakers. It wasn't even close, they had nobody to contain Shaq. In the next season, they reached the finals again, but lost to the Spurs this time. Although we all know the Eastern Conference was pretty weak at the time, it was still impressive that Kidd was able to lead them to the finals, especially in his first 2 seasons with the team. When your 2 best teammates are a very young Richard Jefferson and Kenyon Martin, it's impressive, regardless. No disrespect to those guys, but let's be honest, they wouldn't even have come close to making the finals, or maybe not even the playoffs if Kidd wasn't there. He was just that good. In Kidd's later years in New Jersey, they were able to acquire superstar Vince Carter, but that was followed by a bunch of early playoff exits, as the rest of the Eastern Conference started to catch up and get better. So in Kidd's 6.5 seasons with the Nets, he averaged 15 points, 7 rebounds, 9 assists, and 2 steals per game. During his time there, he made a name for himself as the best point guard in the league for multiple seasons. Although he was not a great shooter or efficient scorer, he made up for it by doing literally everything else. In all of his seasons as a Net, he was selected to either first team or second team all defense. At a solid 6'4", he was able to defend both guard positions effectively, which was a crucial part in molding the Nets into a top defensive team. Anyway, halfway through the 2007-8 season, the Nets felt like it was time to move on. Kidd was still a great player, but the string of early playoff disappointments and a bad start to the season was enough to make them pull the trigger on a trade. He would get traded to the Dallas Mavericks, where he'd eventually win a championship in 2011. And even though he was not the same player as before, the leadership, the defense, and the high basketball IQ were all still there. It was also in Dallas where Kidd finally developed into a much better 3-point shooter, and that was partly because Dirk Nowitzki drew so many double teams that it gave Kidd more open looks. Kidd would spend his last season playing for the Knicks and retired shortly after. So at the end of the day, we all know Kidd had an amazing playing career. But now, here's the funny part. With Kidd's resume and how all his peers credit him for how smart he is, his exceptional leadership, and his ability to recognize plays before they even happen, you'd expect him to become a great head coach. And over the years, he did have some good moments, but he also had many more, peculiar moments. He said a lot of things that frankly made no sense, especially when he was coaching the Bucks. From just listening to his post-game interviews, he had some pretty hilarious quotes. This one happened back in December of 2017. For the first 18 games of the 2017-18 season, Jason Terry played a total of 36 minutes in all those games combined. But then in late November, Kidd all of a sudden decided to play Terry for 23 minutes in a single game. When asked about his rotations and why he played Terry for 23 minutes, Kidd responded by saying, "I've always been a believer that your vets start to play in December, so it's December for us and he's going to start playing from here on out." What? Is this even a thing? Then later on, in a game between the Bucks and Cavs, the Bucks were up by 3 points with 2 seconds left and the Cavs had no timeouts. Chris Middleton, a 90% free throw shooter, was about to shoot his second free throw. So if he makes this, it would be a 4-point lead and the Bucks will safely walk away with a win. But Jason Kidd, for some reason, had the genius idea of telling Middleton to intentionally miss the second free throw, which he did, and even though it worked out and the Cavs missed the final shot at the buzzer to tie it, Kidd explained that he wanted Middleton to miss because he didn't want the Cavs to somehow get a 4-point play.
My first response was to miss the second one. We'll take the bet of someone making it from the other side of the floor. Being a gambler, understanding if we did make that free throw, our luck, they get it inbounds at half court and we foul the 3-point shooter and it's a 4-point play. So we'll take our chances with them heaving a full court shot.
But, I mean, if Middleton just made the second free throw, the rest of the Bucks could just stand there and do nothing, and then they would have won the game, instead of risking the Cavs tying the game with a full court shot or half court shot or something like that. Additionally, there was a time early in the season where Gary Payton II was starting at shooting guard. When Kidd was asked why in the world was that guy starting, he responded by saying, "You can't lose a game in the first 3 or 4 minutes." Also, I should mention that his defensive scheme was not working. It worked in his first season with the Bucks in 2014-15, where the Bucks finished the season with the 5th best defensive efficiency. But other teams figured it out really quickly. Ben Falk from CleaningTheGlass.com wrote an article about the Bucks' defensive scheme and the problems with it. Basically, the Bucks were giving up way too many open threes and open layups, which are two of the most efficient shots in the game. So it's no surprise that their defense under Kidd has fallen off drastically over the years. And subsequently, he would be fired on January 22nd, 2018, which he definitely deserved as the team was underachieving. And that sums up the amazing, yet interesting career of Jason Kidd. At one point, he was part of a promising Big Three, which ended because the three of them were not mature enough to be capable leaders. The road was bumpy in the beginning, but eventually, Kidd would develop into arguably the best leader in the entire league with the Nets. His spectacular playing career was kinda negatively affected by a lackluster coaching career. On the court, Kidd was a magician, but off the court or on the sidelines as a coach, it was a completely different story. Out of all the players I've ever watched, Kidd was one of those guys who I thought would become a great head coach after his playing days were over, so it was a surprise when he was struggling. Anyway, I hope everyone enjoyed that video on Jason Kidd. Where do you think he ranks on the all-time point guards list? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Peace.